Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/IDontWorkHereLady, where people get mistaken for being a worker at places they don't work at by some real oblivious people. But also every once in a while you come across a strangely wholesome encounter, so be sure to stick around to the end for that one. Alright guys, subscribe if you haven't yet, and we're jumping right in. Nobody works here, lady. Most especially not the moose. My friends went hiking in the woods recently. They parked at the unmanned trailhead. I'm guessing they mean unnamed, where another car was already parked. As they got out of their car, a woman started walking rapidly towards them, demanding, "Where are the moose? There are supposed to be moose. I looked it up on the internet." As if my friends, as locals, are somehow responsible for stalking the woods, and can tell her the moose's public appearance schedule. One of them tried to explain to this crazy person that moose don't often lounge around in the open, especially not this time of year. It is the rut and start of hunting season. He suggested that if she just wanted to get a sense of the size of the beasts, she should check with the local game warden and maybe see a fresh kill. She finally marched back to her car, still muttering to herself that there are supposed to be moose, and drove off. My friend stood there in stunned silence for a moment, and then burst out laughing before starting their hike. I'm told it was a gorgeous day, and they couldn't help but feel sorry for this strange lady who couldn't appreciate the natural beauty around her because she can't grasp the difference between a petting zoo and an area of natural habitation. Yeah, as someone who lives in an area with a lot of wild moose, I've had my fair share of moose sightings, and I can tell you, a moose is not something you'd usually wish to come across. They are big and aggressive, especially in the right season. So a moose encounter is something that should be handled with extreme caution, and usually involves trying to create distance from them as best as you can and just getting the hell out of there. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're beautiful creatures, and it's nice to appreciate them. But I get the feeling that this woman might not be totally aware of the dangers of them. She might just end up in an article one day that reads, "Local woman tries to pet moose and gets attacked." So good luck out there. 5-year-old asked if this is the phone number for a retail store. This happened about 30 years ago. I was definitely the a-hole in this situation, but in my defense, I was 5. My family's home phone number was 1 digit off from a sporting goods store in my town, called Joe Jones. Naturally, we'd get a fair number of calls from people with the wrong number. We had caller ID, so my parents would see an unfamiliar number on the ringing phone, and say, "Look, it might be someone trying to call Joe Jones again." They'd pick up and say, "Hello? I'm sorry, you have the wrong number." And then just hang up and say, "Yep, Joe Jones again." Now, since I was 5, I failed to realize 2 key things about this situation. 1. Joe Jones was the name of a store, not a person. Easy mistake to make. 2. That it was different people calling each time. Since my parents could always tell it was a call for Joe Jones, I thought it was always the same number they kept recognizing. I had only ever used the speed dial to make an outgoing call, so I assumed some friend of Joe had just misprogrammed their phone to call us instead of him, and was really lazy about fixing it. I was annoyed this person kept bothering us. Then came the day. My dad was at work and my mom was home with me. She was busy with something when the phone rang and asked me to answer it. I went over to the kitchen phone, reached up to pull it off the hook, and said, "Hello? Hi, is this Joe Jones?" I was finally talking to the person who had been bothering us. I summoned up all the righteous fury young me could muster and said very sternly into the phone, "No, he doesn't live here. Stop calling us." My mom jumped up and snatched the phone from me to apologize to the caller and smooth things over. After she hung up, she took the time to talk to me to make sure I understood what was actually going on and how to be polite over the phone. She wasn't angry. These days, I always try to be polite on the phone, regardless of the situation. I think back to this incident as being the day I learned that lesson. Thanks, Mom, I miss you. Yes, I work in retail. No, I'm not a babysitter. When this happened, I was working as a checkout clerk in a supermarket, and it was between one of the COVID lockdowns in Australia, when non-essential stores had opened for a bit. I was at a shopping center in H&M getting some of the basics I'd been needing to replace. New pair of jeans, singlets, etc. When an entitled mother with her mask down to her chin, whom I sadly recognized as being a regular annoying customer at my store, marched up with her little boy, Gollum, 4 to 5. Side note, I had worked at the same store for several years, and had seen Gollum grow from a normal kid to an entitled brat, and she had previously tried to trick me into babysitting Gollum while I was at work. "Hey, I just need to grab a few things. Could you watch my baby for a quick sec?" Turns to walk away. "Sorry, no, I can't." And you may not have noticed, but your mask isn't on quite right. I was getting very sick of reminding customers about this, but couldn't help it. Storm's back over. Have you got something better to do? That doesn't matter. Don't you work here? I'm a paying customer and you need my business. No, I don't work here, but that wouldn't matter. This is a clothes shop and people are here working, so no one can babysit. She said a few more things before storming off, dragging Gollum, who had begun pulling things off the rack. I am not a taxi. Background. I used to drive a semi-luxury car, Ford Falcon G6E, in silver with darkest possible tinted windows. This car is used a lot by taxi companies for their silver service and limousine services. My family members also fly a lot, domestic and international, for work. And as I happen to have a knack for rocking up at the airport just at the right moment to collect them, I get asked to pick them up on most occasions, generally late in the evening/night, so would be dressed quite casually. Fast forward to one such occasion, not long after I had bought the car. I happen to be about 20 minutes early for once. It's about 10 p.m. I am in the pickup zone, not the taxi zone, at the international terminal. I'll wait for a couple of minutes, do a lap of the car park, then come back. Repeat until target acquired. Chilling in the driver's seat, watching clips on YouTube with headphones on, when the back passenger door opens, and a flustered businesswoman climbs into my car whilst on the phone to someone. Startled, I turn in my seat. She doesn't even look at me as she barks the name of a hotel at me, and throws her carry-on on the seat beside her and carries on her heated conversation. I am still staring at her in disbelief that some random could just get in the back of my car. After about 20 to 30 seconds, she finally realized that we are not moving. She sighs, tells her conversation partner to wait a moment, and says crankily, "Is there some kind of problem?" "Yeah," I reply. "I'm not your taxi." "I don't care if you were sent to pick up someone else. I'm here, they're not. They can ride with another taxi." Maybe I should rephrase. I'm not a taxi. What? I am not a taxi. At this point, the only noise is the quiet tinny sound of laughter erupting from the phone in her hand. She looks me up and down from the messy uncombed hair, 5 o'clock shadow, ragged t-shirt with holes, and tracksuit pants. She finally speaks as she hangs up the phone, and grabs her bag in one hand and the inside door handle in the other. Well, how on earth was I meant to know that? I would say the lack of a light bar on the roof and decals on the door would have made that slightly obvious. She doesn't say a word as she climbs back out of the car, back onto the pavement, and hurries down to the actual taxi rank. Now, this could be a situation where it's just a funny misunderstanding, but I feel like what really sets people apart here is how they react when they realize their mistake. You can admit your fault and be like, "Oh, silly me, sorry about that." Or you can be like this person and just give them more attitude about it when you're obviously in the wrong. Karen can't understand that just because we were moving furniture doesn't mean we work there. A little background, I work in film as a set dresser, which among many other tasks includes being a glorified mover. My fellow set dressers and I were finishing up our final days on a gig this past week. On Friday, we had a full 16-foot truckload of furniture that we didn't use in the movie that we were attempting to donate to a thrift store. The staff at the thrift store only okayed a few furniture items for us to donate, which were throughout the truck, which forced us to have to unload a bunch of our stuff to get to a few items that they would take, and then reload the other furniture back on. The staff left us to do our thing as they were busy. We were already a bit confused about our own situation with the store. It was really hot outside and we were all tired and sweating from a week of furniture moving. Cue Karen. This woman pulls her car up to where we are and gets out with a couple boxes of items. She sees us and flippantly asks, "Where should I leave these?" We tell her, "Sorry, we don't work here, we aren't sure." She starts to get a little huffy, and instead of looking for a staff member, she just spots one of our dining tables and says with an irritated sigh, "I guess I'll just leave these here," and plops the boxes on our stuff. My coworker responds with, "Actually, sorry, that table isn't staying. It's going back on our truck. You can't leave it there." Now she is visibly annoyed, and with a raised and very entitled tone asks us again, "Well then, where should I leave this stuff?" To which we again reply, "We don't know. We don't work here. You have to ask someone who works here." At this point, she is pretty irritated and huffs over to where I am standing, angrily throws the stuff on the ground next to me, stomps back to her car, and promptly drives away. It felt like she pegged us as working class people, and therefore, we must be able to give her the answers she wanted and couldn't understand why we didn't have them. Some people are so entitled, it shocks me. Hey, you don't work here. Want a job? This didn't happen to me, but it was relayed to me by the manager. There was a locally owned hardware store close to where I was working. This place had the most amazing selection of fasteners, like nuts, bolts, screws, etc., down to M2 Allen screws, the kind of stuff you'd never find at a big box. Everything was always in its place. You would never see a bag of M3x5 screws in the M3x8 slot. It was heaven for a tinkerer like me. One evening, I complimented the manager on how immaculate the section always was, and she started laughing. She tells me that it used to be a mess, but one day everything was in the right spots, but none of the employees would take credit. They all hated having to organize the section. I can't blame them. And everyone was confused. They started joking about being visited by the Bolt Fairy. A couple days later, she notices a teen boy intently looking through one of the drawers. Then he moves a few bags around and closes it. She realized she was witnessing the Bolt Fairy in action. He notices he's being watched. He muttered a timid, "I'm sorry," and turns to leave. The manager stops him and says, "Don't be sorry, but I can't have you working here unless you work here. Can you come back later with your mom or dad?" He mutters a shy, "Okay," and leaves. About an hour later, he comes back with his mom. The mom was looking apprehensive and apologetic. The teen looked like he knew he was about to be in big trouble. The mom explained that her son was autistic and loved organizing things. He wouldn't get stressed about things that were disorganized, but just enjoyed sorting stuff. The manager explained that for insurance, legal, and moral reasons, he couldn't work in the store unless he worked for the store. The mom said that it wouldn't happen again, and the teen's eyes started to water. That's when the manager pulled out an application and a uniform polo and asks what hours he wanted to be scheduled. The mom just started laughing, and the boy exploded into tears of joy. I found out later that he worked there for about 2 years, until his family had to move across the country. When he put in his notice, the owner found out where they were moving, went online and found another locally owned hardware store with good reviews, contacted them and gave a glowing recommendation. It's always nice to leave off on a positive one, isn't it? Thanks for hanging out today, guys. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed, drop a like. It really helps me out, and also subscribe for more. Take care, everyone. Stay beautiful, and I'll see you next time.